Kia ora talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the Niche Cage. We are here to dive into some Aotearoa sporting matters, plenty of cricket to discuss later on, lots of football to discuss with Auckland FC and the Wellington Phoenix women preparing for finals footy in the A-League. NBL basketball rolls on, and we've got to do our weekly check-in with Charlisse Leger-Walker. I'd also highlight that no surprises the Houston Rockets are losing without Steven Adams. Like, obviously that was going to be the case. There's nothing else about whatever Houston Rockets are doing matters aside from the fact that Steven Adams isn't playing. So if you hear any analysis about the Houston Rockets, it's all about Steven Adams, obviously. He is the reason why the Houston Rockets are not winning, because he's out injured. And yes, Steven Adams is
which isn't even like we're not even taking the piss when we say that. Like this, there are facts and stuff that back this up very completely. Check out old mate Funaki's stats on X. Like there's a whole lot of evidence that shows that. Well, not only the Houston Rockets are way better when Steven Adams is there, but also every team that he's ever played for, except maybe the New Orleans Pelicans, who were a bit wobbly that one year he was there. But every other team, like this, we went through this exact same story with the Memphis Grizzlies, right? Where it was like he had a long-term injury, the team fell off. Everyone starts talking about like, oh well, it's Ja Morant, it's Jaren Jackson Jr. No, Steven Adams is injured. Like there's a shining beacon here where it's been true throughout his career wherever he's been, and it's no different at the Houston Rockets, even if everyone just wants to talk about Kevin Durant.
The issue is Steven Adams is often injured.
That is a issue, yeah. If he's that important, but then he also does cop a few of these knocks.
So we'll talk about some Charlisse Leger-Walker stuff, NBL update, and obviously we need to start with New Zealand Rugby League, because the Warriors, they had another gritty win. And these wins where they're not playing their best rugby league are very important in the season. They did have an excellent win against the Melbourne Storm a few weeks ago. And then they've, what was the Titans win? It was 50 good minutes versus 30 good minutes. Like, got the job done, got the win. Then they come up against the Dolphins, and however way you want to slice it, the Warriors got the job done. Were they playing their best rugby league? No. Does that matter? No. Because it's all about just getting 2 points, getting the win, and moving forward, because unless you're playing teams like the Dragons, it is quite hard to win games in the NRL, and especially when you've got a team like the Dolphins who were fired up. And it's also important because the Warriors are second on the ladder. They haven't had a bye. So these byes will start to come into the mix. A lot of teams haven't had a bye. The Panthers also haven't had a bye, and they are first. But as we roll through the season, we're going to get more and more byes in action. The riveting round of the bye. Great footy played in the bye round.
Dragons' best win of the season's coming up next week in the bye round.
Shout out. 2 points in the bag.
The first 2 points.
Yeah, not the first win, but the first 2 points of the season. First points of the season for the St. George Illawarra Dragons.
Well, if anyone can manage to lose to the bye round, it'll be the Dragons at the moment.
Especially because they don't have a Kiwi coach. And this is the thing that I want to focus on. We've got the Warriors win review that's on YouTube at the moment. We'll be talking a lot more rugby league tomorrow on YouTube as well. But there's the thing that I'm thinking the most about after that Warriors win is just all the amazing things that are happening for New Zealand Rugby League. And we know that the Warriors are not New Zealand Rugby League. Rugby League in New Zealand and the Warriors are separate things. Obviously, the tentacles switch over, but a lot of people look at the Warriors as the representation of rugby league in New Zealand. But we've also got Kieran Foran winning games for the Sea Eagles and Benji Marshall winning games for the Tigers. So we've got two Kiwi coaches who are winning. I don't know if there's like maybe a Stephen Kearney, a Stacey Jones, maybe Gary Freeman did some coaching or something, Graham Lowe, like those type of characters. I don't think we've had two winning Kiwi coaches in the NRL ever. And I'm not thinking about 1965 when it wasn't the NRL. I'm thinking about my time following sports closely. I can't think of a time where we've had two winning Kiwi coaches. So obviously the mistake the Dragons made is they didn't get a Kiwi coach, because you inject Kieran Foran into the Sea Eagles coaching position, the interim position, he's winning. Benji Marshall, you give him some time and space to build out a program, he's winning. The Sea Eagles and the Tigers are doing their best over the last few years because they've got Kiwi coaches. Let's say that, because they have Kiwi coaches. There was also a game over the weekend, and that was the Broncos defeating the Bulldogs. And the Broncos did so. Now, of course, the Bulldogs should have won because all the Broncos injuries. But those Broncos injuries just meant we got more players from New Zealand playing for the Broncos. Hayes Perham at fullback getting revenge on his former club. And based on everything that the Bulldogs are doing, I don't know if Hayes Perham was wrong as the Bulldogs fullback. Everyone seemed to hate Hayes Perham as the Bulldogs fullback. What's happened since you got rid of Hayes Perham as the Bulldogs fullback? You got worse. Like, it's not Hayes Perham's fault. Hayes Perham isn't terrible at rugby league, and in fact, he did his job against his former team. Karapani, Mariner, they are also in the team. Jordan Rickey's usually in the team. Willison's usually in the team. But we also got Preston Rickey from up north. So Hayes Perham's from Rotorua. Pikiao Jr. Karapani Otahuhu Jr. went to Pakuranga College. Dean Mariner Maris Jr., I think he went to St. Paul's College. Jordan Rickey Hornby out of Christchurch. Willison, Fatafata. Preston Rickey's from the Hokianga. I think he went to Mount Albert Grammar in Auckland. And of course, the Broncos also have Antonio Verhoeven, one of the 5 Kiwi NRL debutants of the year. He's from Greymouth. So that Broncos team that defeated the Bulldogs had 2 players from the South Island. Jordan Rickey and Verhoeven, but Verhoeven, I don't think he actually played. So I'm giving it a bit of extra juice there. But that not only reflects what's possible for NRL teams with the amount of talent coming out of New Zealand, it also reflects what the Broncos are doing. And you ask any Australian rugby league person, they'll say the Broncos are the biggest, baddest club in the world. They're a powerhouse. They're the richest club. All this stuff. They've got the greatest concentration of rugby league juniors and all this stuff. They also love New Zealand. And I'm going to be curious how the Broncos women's team looks moving forward, because a lot of their best players are now with the Warriors. And I'm curious if the Broncos are going to stay busy recruiting women from New Zealand. And they will have women in the NRLW team from New Zealand, even though Nu'uausala, Gail Broughton, those type of players have gone to the Warriors. The Broncos recruited Mariner, Rickey, and Willison and Verhoeven from New Zealand as teenagers. Willison stayed in New Zealand to finish his schooling. Mariner, Willison, and Verhoeven all left New Zealand while still at school, I think. Maybe Verhoeven finished his schooling. I'm not sure. No, he played for the Australian schoolboys, so obviously he did some schooling in Australia. So you've got those Kiwi NRL juniors who the Broncos have recruited from New Zealand. They picked up Hayes Perham from the Bulldogs. They picked up Karapani from the Rabbitohs. And they picked up Preston Rickey from the Panthers. Right now, the Broncos also have a lot of juniors in their system from New Zealand. You look around the headlines, and all the Broncos New Zealand junior headlines are about Calvin Harris Tavita. obviously the younger brother of Chanel Harris-Tavita. There's a lot of buzz and hype about him, having come through King's College, and I think he's over in Australia playing junior footy at the moment, or maybe started the season. He's meant to be an awesome half. There is no buzz, there is no hype about Toko Aitua Owen from Rotorua Boys High School, a Nono Taha junior, he's a starting halfback in South Logan under-19 to affiliate to the Broncos, and he's been part of the extended squad for the Broncos in NRLQ under-20s. So there's all this buzz about Harris-Tavita as a half from New Zealand in the Broncos system. Meanwhile, the Broncos have another player who's also playing halfback from New Zealand who's already doing stuff at a higher level. Based on how the NRLQ under-20s teams and squads are selected, I've got Toko Owen as the second best Kiwi NRL junior in the Broncos system, behind Marley Igerson coming out of Tauranga, who is, I think he's the next best Kiwi NRL junior in the Broncos system. Watch out for Marley Igerson, hard-working middle forward. So there's all the buzz about Harris-Tavita. No one's talking about Toko Owen, but Toko Owen is a halfback who is doing the job to the extent that he was promoted to the under-20 squad for the Broncos. And he's been the starting halfback for the Broncos in under-19 Mal Meninga Cup for most of that season. The Broncos also have Otahuhu Juniors Ambrose Puluno, Tomu Cook, and they've also got Ronan Byford, who was with the Warriors and then moved to the Broncos. He's also a Nono Taha junior. I think he's from Whakatane off the top of my head. So I've got that Broncos team that defeated the Bulldogs had 7 players who played junior rugby league, let alone whatever they were doing in rugby union. They played junior rugby league in New Zealand. The Broncos also have at least 6. Probably, if we're diving deeper into their system, I think we're getting upwards of 15 juniors from New Zealand in that Broncos system. So all of that's happening. That happened this weekend. Same time, we've got 2 winning coaches from New Zealand. I don't think that's ever happened before. That came a couple days after the New Zealand Warriors women announced 3 development players, one of whom is 17 years old. She scored 4 tries in the Lisa Fiola Cup, which is an under-17 competition for the Bulldogs. They won that final in 2024. So she's 17 years old now, and she scored 4 tries in the under-17 final in 2024. Asha Taumoipia Williams coming out of Howick College and Howick Hornets. She's also played Farah Palmer Cup for Auckland already. And the Warriors also signed Patricia Hay, who's already played Farah Palmer Cup for Manawatu. She's 18 years old. They also signed Jezreel Mai'uu, who is also 18 years old. Unfortunately, she hasn't played Farah Palmer Cup already, but she was with the Dragons last year in their women's system. Taumoipia Williams, she's already been in the Bulldogs system. Jezreel Mai'uu's already been in the Dragons system, and Hay has already been in the Panthers system. All 3 are from New Zealand. All 3 are 18 years or younger. 2 of them have already played Farah Palmer Cup. Asha Taumoipia is, I don't know the intricacies of junior women's rugby union, but based on what she's done at 17 years old, you could say she is the best junior women's rugby league, rugby union player in New Zealand, who's also dominated junior footy in Australia. So she signed to the Warriors as a development player. ultimately, the one nugget I'll say here is that the Warriors just signed a 17-year-old who's already played Farah Cup. Farah Cup is the women's provincial rugby union competition in New Zealand. So obviously we can ponder the effects that the growing women's pipeline that the Warriors have and that all Australian NRLW groups have, how that affects women's rugby union in New Zealand. At the same time as all that's happening, the Warriors just had 34, let's round it up, 35,000 people at the Cake Tin in Wellington, Matt Henry Stadium, Henry Nichols Stadium. Is there a football goalie called Henry Gray?
Yeah, there is. Fringe always hasn't played internationally, but on the books at Ipswich, on loan at was at loan at Braintree Town last year, on loan at Harrogate Town this year.
Oh yeah, I thought so.
And a youth player for the Wellington Phoenix before. He's from Wellington, unlike Henry Nichols and Matt Henry.
That's fantastic. So I'd add Henry Gray Stadium to the list of stadiums for the stadium otherwise known as the Cake Tin. That crowd was bonkers. That occasion in Wellington was amazing. And it kind of snuck up on me because I was actually thinking, oh, the Warriors are sold out. But they always say they sell out. And there's always empty blocks at the Cake Tin. And there's always empty blocks of bright yellow seats at the Cake Tin. For Super Rugby, for football, oftentimes for the All Blacks. Not always, but oftentimes there's a few empty seats for the All Blacks as well. So I was preparing myself for a disconnect, for the Warriors to say it was sold out, and for me to be seeing empty seats. And I don't care at all when an organization says a sellout, sold out. Who cares? Just let's deal with the numbers, because the numbers tell a better story than sold out, sellout. Because the Warriors could have sold all of their tickets available. So you could have two big blocks of empty seats at the Cake Tin, and it's a sellout. Because in theory, the Warriors have sold all available tickets. Like, you can get into Bullcucker like that. But that didn't happen. Didn't need to worry about it. Because there were no empty seats at the Cake Tin. There were 35,000 people there, fizzed up, frothing for rugby league. And forgive me if all of that was far more entertaining than was whatever was happening in Christchurch with the Super Rugby round. Because I just saw a lot of old people at that Super Rugby round, to be honest. None of it looked as fun and as entertaining as what was happening at Henry Gray Stadium in Wellington, which then makes me wonder how that Super Rugby round is going to look compared to when the Warriors are playing in the Glass House of Christchurch. Because I think that is going to blow away whatever the rugby union folks are thinking down in Christchurch. It was an amazing occasion in Wellington. It was an amazing summary of rugby league status in New Zealand. And when you stack it on top of all these other things that are happening, I mean, stack it on what we have been observing about rugby league in New Zealand and the New Zealand rugby league flavour that is in Australia as well, I am pretty confident in my opinions and my beliefs of rugby league in New Zealand. Let me just say that. Let me twist it that way. I don't want to fire shots at anyone, but obviously some other sports, they might want to buck up their ideas because the takeover is happening. It's already happening. To be honest, it's almost complete with what we are seeing. Because any other New Zealand sporting franchise would love to have consistent crowds over 20,000 people at any stadium in New Zealand. And that's what the Warriors do. But of course, the Warriors are not rugby league in New Zealand. They are a part of rugby league in New Zealand. Part of that part is having a 17-year-old woman who has already played Farah Palmer Cup. But the Warriors have got nothing to do with the Broncos recruiting fantastic juniors from around New Zealand. In their NRL tier and their junior tier. Nothing with what the Warriors are doing has any influence on Kieran Foran and Benji Marshall being winning NRL coaches. Nothing the Warriors are doing has any effect on the Bulldogs under-19 women's team having at least 13, 14, 15 players from New Zealand in it this season. Like, the Warriors have nothing to do with that. But the Bulldogs junior pipeline is full. The majority of the players in the pipeline are from New Zealand. Nothing the Warriors are doing has any influence on the fact that the Panthers do not have an NRLW team and they have 4 to 5 players every game in their under-19 women's team. And so on and so forth. But shout out to the 35,000 people who showed up in Wellington, because that was awesome. It was a fun game. It was a brutal game. And somehow the Warriors just battled through, got the win, keep it moving and grooving.
Yeah, that was like, I didn't even recognize Matt Henry Nichols Grey Stadium without any yellow seats visible. It was just a crazy sight. It looks so cool. Like, I haven't seen an atmosphere like that since, like, I don't know, maybe 15, 16 years ago when the All Whites played there to qualify for the World Cup and beating Bahrain. I remember that being a big atmosphere and like a full sellout. It's like, cricket doesn't do that. Even All Blacks tests don't do that. But even when All Blacks do get big crowds, it's like the atmosphere is still different, because people go to All Blacks games expecting to see a victory. People go to Warriors games expecting to just have a good time and enjoy the sport and have an entertaining contest one way or another. And well aware that there have been many Warriors games that people go to where they leave depressed because things have ended in a shocking manner. Not recently. Haven't had many of those for a little while, but that is part of, like, the longer term Warriors experience from the stands. And it's probably also part of why that is easily one of, if not the most passionately followed sports organization in the country right now, especially if you take out, like, international teams. And that's always that, like, that, because the Warriors will play these games a couple times a season where they might have a game in Christchurch or a game in Wellington, or preseason game in Napier at one point, or Hamilton, or things like that. And they always get good crowds whenever they go to these places. And it always comes with, like, a follow-up of, well, New Zealand needs another NRL team. Like, when's the expansion coming this way? And I mean, everything you say every week shows that their talent is there for 2 or 3 more teams. Like, that's not an issue. I am curious how much of, like, these types of crowds that the Warriors get is because it's rugby league and everyone loves that. Some of it certainly is, and I have no doubt they could make a successful NRL team in Christchurch or something like that. But some of it, like a lot of it, a good chunk of it, is also because it's the Warriors specifically. And you see this when they play in Australia, because they get crowds whenever they play away as well. Like, you had a bit in the newsletter yesterday, right, about how, like, the biggest crowds of the season often for the Australian teams are when the Warriors come to town. And I think what was the stat? The only crowd they've played in the season below 20,000 was away to the Sharks, which was the Sharks' biggest home crowd of the season. It was I think that was right. Interrupt me if I'm telling a fib.
I don't know if the Warriors are responsible for the biggest crowds in Australia. For Australian
not all
teams.
of them, but it's clearly.
I don't know that for a fact, but I do know that the Warriors versus Sharks, which was 13,000 because it is a smaller stadium in Cronulla, was the biggest crowd for the Sharks this season.
And they have this effect, the Warriors. Like, they play games, and especially when they're, like, the games in Queensland are always big turnouts, things like this. like so a lot of that is Warriors specifically, and everything that's gone into supporting the Warriors over a couple of decades and 3 decades, I guess. And yeah, I'm curious on how much that flows on, like what that would look like. If you chucked a schism in there and said, like, here's another New Zealand NRL team, I don't think you get exactly the same stuff from the outset, but then maybe you would. I don't know, because I might have said the same thing about football and the Wellington Phoenix, and then Auckland FC come along and they very quickly, basically immediately create their own thing, and it becomes like this, it's distinct from the Phoenix and physically imposing upon the Phoenix and like barging them out of their own territory and in a few instances there. So yeah, I don't know, but one thing I know for sure is that wherever the Warriors go, people turn out, and it's always a great atmosphere. It's the best ticket in town when they're around, and they've done a fair bit of living up to that this year. Like they had the couple of stink results there, and then they've bounced back with, I think it's 3 on the trot now, right? And they've been able to, as you said at the start, they've been able to win games without being at their best. And you know who wins games when they're not at their best? Good teams. That's who does that. Teams who finish up near the top of the table are the teams that are able to, if they're on fire, they put you away. If they're not on fire, well, they find a way. And the Warriors found a way against the Dolphins.
Yeah, there is already enough players from New Zealand for a second team in New Zealand, but that team doesn't need to have just New Zealand players. Like, to be honest, the number of players from New Zealand is irrelevant, and like they didn't go to Perth Bears because there's enough players in Perth. Like that's not happening. Papua New Guinea is a different story because that is rugby league to Papua New Guinea is cricket to India, so it's a completely different equation. But who cares? I don't care about expansion because we're trying to be present here. We don't think about the future. We don't. We're not talking about Jerome Luai possibly signing for PNG Chiefs in 2 years' time. Like, we've got shit to discuss right here, right now, that is happening right now. And what is happening right now is that there are different Warriors fandoms. There's the Mount Smart Temple, right? Warriors fans, if you don't live in Auckland, I think most Warriors fans, they will want to make the pilgrimage to the Mount Smart Temple. Like, there might be Warriors fans in Australia who want to go to Auckland just to watch the Warriors at Mount Smart because it is the temple. And of course, it's the spiritual home, and the Mount Smart fans, they've got their own way of supporting the Warriors. Then you go to Australia, and the Aussie Warriors fans, they have their way of supporting the Warriors. In very basic terms, they have different chants, right? Like, in Australia, some dude shows up with a drum, right? Those things, like, there are different ways that the Warriors fans support their team in Australia to what we see at Mount Smart Stadium. Then you go to the other regions in New Zealand, as you said, the pre-season games get monster crowds, but Wellington, Christchurch, these cities, they support the Warriors in their way. So we have a team in New Zealand that has different pockets of fandom, and it's quite unique. It's pretty interesting. It's very enjoyable because every Warriors game is slightly different. Like, we're going to go from the Cake Tin, 34,000 people. They're going to be playing in Sydney on Saturday night against the Eels. That's going to be a totally different style of fan experience. The only common thread is there's going to be a lot of Warriors fans. And the other common thread, like the sign thing, that's a Warriors thing. If you see a sign in any other New Zealand sport, it started with the Warriors. You see signs around the NRL, it's a bit tricky because you did have your oust-douse type of signs and those type of things. But
Dragons always have a lot of them.
Yeah, but the barrage of signs and the quality and quantity, that's a Warriors thing. That's probably the one thing I find amazing about the Warriors right now is how they have cultivated different fans and different pockets of fans. 35,000 people in Wellington is crazy. They were going crazy. They weren't there to watch a game of footy. They were there for a party, as they should be. Because they're in Wellington, and old mate Lux the Scux is in Wellington as well, and he's got bad vibes all over him, so I'd want to have a party as well. And obviously some Mother Nature stuff's happening in the area, so you just want to have a good time. Then they're going to go to Christchurch. That's going to be a whole different thing, but they're going to be having a good time. There's nothing else in New Zealand sport like it. The variety of fans in Australia, Mount Smart, the regions, everywhere, and how differently they support the team. Because I did hear an ooh-ah up the waz in Wellington, right? You don't hear that at all at Mount Smart. Sure, I'd like a bit more variety in the chants at Mount Smart, but I don't want that because it's Mount Smart, and Mount Smart fans have their way of supporting the team. You go to Australia, you're getting an ooh-ah up the waz chant, you're getting Mr. Drummer Boy, he's going crazy, you're getting all sorts of, you're getting the long drawn out Warriors. Like those things are happening in different locations. And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. It's one of the coolest things we've got to talk about and I love that idea about like the different pockets, the different like expressions in different areas around this. This is what I sort of I didn't really close my thought about the expansion stuff, but you already summarized what I was going to bring around to. It's like that's a tired thing to talk about after an experience like this, because it's not about NRL expansion. It's about the Warriors and what they bring to the table, especially right now at the moment while they're winning games. And that stuff is, yeah. Because I mean, like just to use the A-League thing, because that's an obvious example of the crossover Kiwi team Aussie thing. Like Auckland FC and Wellington Phoenix both have really good, passionate, like core supporter groups. They get a bit of travel, but they don't get big crowds when they go away. It's more like small little pockets, and like the little corner unique. Of yellow and stuff. That is unique, and that is cool for what they had, and they do. They make up for they bring bang for their buck, the smaller groups, but it's like there's not enough to pack out a thing, right? And the Warriors can do that in different, like, and they can pack out an away stand consistently every week. Like the Phoenix have been struggling to get 4,000 to that same stadium that the Warriors just brought 35,000. And I know that was a one-off game from the Warriors, but I think if they played 6 or 7 games in Wellington throughout a season for some unimaginable circumstance, I don't think that those crowds would drop by that much. They probably wouldn't be filling it out like top to bottom every single week, but I think there would be a pretty high line on what that figure would be, and that's what the Warriors bring to New Zealand sports, and also, frankly, Australian sports, because they play in an Australian league.
You've also got the comparison to how they started last season, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I just find it so interesting how there was so much Luke Metcalf hype based on how they started last season. And, okay, the craziest thing is that Jackson Ford is the best player in the NRL, which, like, that speaks for itself. But the Warriors are so much better right now than they were last season. Right? Like, they are winning, they're scoring more tries, they're scoring more points, more line breaks, more tackle breaks. Like, people were poking fun at the Warriors for being one of the best teams in the NRL last season, but having a points differential of 0. Well, they got the second best points differential in the NRL right now. So the comparison to last season is interesting, as well as the fact that this, again, it goes like a lot of the stuff I've heard about the Warriors. Oh, this player's going to be leaving. This player's leaving. This player's leaving. Oh, surely when Tohu Harris leaves, they'll suck. Surely when Shauna Johnson retires, they'll suck. All this stuff. What's happened? They just keep winning, right? They get better. This season, none of the following players have played more than 5 games. Mitch Barnett, Adam Pompey, Kurt Capewell, Luke Metcalf, Tamaira Martin. Meanwhile, these players have played more than 5 games. Leka Alasima, Sam Healy, Jacob Laban, Vai Monga, Tuaupiki, Ari Liatawa. So that is another thing we can use to reinforce the fact that it doesn't matter who is available, who's playing, who's leaving, who's staying. There is something bigger that is working for the Warriors. And it's best summed up in the halves situation right now. Because Luke Metcalf, he played 2 games and they were the worst games of the season. Meanwhile, Tana Boyd continues to do the job as the halfback of this team. But there's also that young player factor that we're starting to see with the Warriors right now playing good footy. And guess what? There's a whole heap more of these dudes coming. Right? Like, there is literally another player doing similar stuff to what Leka Halassim has done. That is, of course, Bishop Neal. Oh, you want another Aussie half? We got 3 more of them. Right? Like, you can go through the whole Warriors depth chart, and there are at least 3, 4, 5 other youngsters who haven't played NRL who will be just as good as anyone I'm mentioning here. Kalis Fatialof is awesome. Right? Jet Cleary's pretty good. Makai Tafu is going to be a pretty good NRL player. And so on and so forth. Righto, let's simmer down a bit with some mindfulness.
Okay, so I've decided today that it's going to be a lucky dip one because I was working like right up to the point of recording to finish the domestic football thing. So I've got my roomie day by day book and pick a number between 1 and 365. And we'll see what we come up with.
227.
227. 227 delivers 5 lines. To pause and ponder is a godly trait as opposed to rushing headlong, which occurs in the devil's realm. Even dogs before eating first sniff the dry bread you throw before them. Which actually is basically just what you said at the start. Is like, let's simmer down for a sec, do some mindfulness, and the mindfulness says, well, why don't you simmer down for a sec? Sweet, gotcha.
It is, now obviously there's a lot of like life situations that make me and many of us think this, but like, I just find myself so often thinking, what's the rush? It's like, so like obviously driving is where a lot of the mindfulness happens, and someone zooms past you or someone's just right up your ass and doing some crazy stuff, and I'm thinking, crikey Jack, mate, you must be in a rush. It's like, in those moments I think I'm so lucky and grateful that I am not in a rush, because when you do have the awareness and your awareness of what it feels like to be in a rush, I don't want to feel that anymore. It's like when you feel the anger rising up within you, it's like, whoa. I don't like that feeling. You know, I'm sure there's some people out there who love the insanity of anger that takes them over. And that's not me. And I don't want to feel that. And it's the same for being in a rush. It's like, no, we'll get to where we need to get to. I'm not in a rush to get there. So let's just slow down and chill out and be present in where we are. Because nothing good comes from being in a rush. And oftentimes, there are things that happen, like a stub your toe or you burn your tongue, right? Like, you're so hungers for the feed that you bite the pizza and your whole mouth is burnt. Those things are telling you you're in a rush. And nature has the way of informing us that we're in a rush if we don't have the awareness, and also nothing good comes from being in a rush. So slow down, take a moment, and things just happen more smoothly, I believe, instead of like rah, 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 trying to rush into things and then you're like, holy shit, what's happening?
Yeah, the only thing with that quote that I had a question mark about is the thing about the dogs like taking a sniff before they eat the bread you throw them, because I don't think my dog would. I think he'd just eat, snap it out of my hand if he could, if there's food on offer. But maybe he needs to learn that lesson as well. I get
Yeah,
he
maybe
actually
that
does
just
need to learn
reflects
that lesson.
reflects on the owner.
Maybe it does. I need to slow down so that the dog can slow down. I don't know. The dog's only just recovered from he did his, what do you call it? The dog version of an ACL. So that's I think it's CCL. It's like a canine cruciate ligament. So I think actually he does need to learn that lesson. Probably he needs to read some more Rumi as well.
I've never owned a dog, but all my visions of a dog eating involve them sniffing the food first.
Yeah, maybe he just trusts me too much. If I'm offering him some food, he knows it's already good. I don't know. It's that might also be I might have to train him to be a little bit more skeptical.
But the thing I rush the most is eating.
Yep.
Now, oftentimes there are some Aotearoa vitamins involved, so you lose control of your eating. But I think like it's a good opportunity just to take a pause, and that's why a lot of people do say grace or give thanks for the food, because that at least does give you a moment just chilling out before you go crazy on the food. Because once you pop, you can't stop. Like it's not like you scoff a few mouthfuls in and then you're like, no, 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 we'll just slow down. No, once you start eating, you don't stop until there's no more food left, and then you start to think like, holy cow, what just happened? I ate 2 whole pizzas, and which may or may not happen to me. But shout out to everyone who is not in a rush. We're not in a rush. Hopefully you're not in a rush. And if you do find yourself in a rush, slow down. It's all right. Like,
yeah, sniff some bread.
Yeah, just sniff your food before you have a little bite. I think that the dog sniffing the food could have been left out of mindfulness, maybe. Like, I don't know if that was like it's part of Rumi's ideas, but those ideas are coming from a while ago. He's not.
Yeah, well, he's probably talking about wild dogs as well. I don't know.
Yeah, but ultimately, who cares? We need to talk some more sport. And what is Charlisse Leger-Walker up to as she prepares to try and get some game time in the WNBA?
Well, she's doing a good job of the trying so far. And the Connecticut Sun are probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 days into training camp at this stage. And I've seen not a lot, but there's been a few highlights come out of what they've done so far, because they had an open training session over the weekend where it was like season ticket holders can come in and watch, and it's mostly just doing like scrimmage stuff, but there's sort of 5-on-5 or variations of that full court type setup. So you are seeing what Charlisse Leger-Walker looks like in 20-second clips at a time alongside WNBA professionals, and it was smooth. Like she did not look like she didn't belong. There's like quotes in there from one of their other guards talking about how she's come in with just like great leadership and poise, and she's telling the veterans what to do, and she's not acting like a rookie, she's acting like a point guard. Her coach is talking about her being a floor general already, and this is like she hasn't played a professional game yet, and he's already getting that kind of responsibility. I've seen like in some of those clips, some of the passing is fantastic. We know she's a wonderful passer, especially when she gets on the drive and kicks it back out. She's brilliant at that stuff. Has been throughout her college career, has been whenever she's played for the Tall Ferns. And one little like she already has a head start with the Sun because one of the other players they drafted is Gianna Neepkins, who is like her best friend playing together at UCLA. They were roommates when they were at UCLA. So they're not just like there's a connection on the court, but there's also a connection off the court, which I got to imagine is helping a whole lot in order to just like settle into a new environment, is to have someone there going through the exact same thing with you who you're already close with. That's awesome. That's cool. That's a nice little bonus for her transition into the WNBA. And yeah, man, like the highlights look great. The chat coming out of the team is great. And then there's this other element as well, which is that the WNBA has I think it's a 44 game regular season, so it's quite a bit longer than quite a bit shorter rather than the 82 game NBA season. Shave a couple months off of there, longer off season. As we know, it's changing a little bit because of the big boost, like 4 times the salary cap coming up this year with the new CBA. But up until that point, it's been a sort of recurring thing. And even if the pay goes up with WNBA, you still got this like big off season to fill in. So I think you're still going to see a lot of players doing this thing that has often been the case in WNBA, which is going and playing somewhere else in your off season. And it's fairly common across all basketball because I mean, what's Sam Menenga doing right now? He re-signed with the Breakers, but is playing in China currently. Like it's a normal thing to do across the sport. And what's not normal though is like the ways in which they might overlap. And because the Connecticut Sun have this big French connection, they have a French head coach, they have 3 French players in their wider roster. One of them is their starting point guard, Leila Lake, and one of them is Nellen Gloma, who's a forward who was their highest draft pick of the 4 that they picked in the most recent crew, of which Charlisse Leger-Walker was the 3rd one of that group. They're both playing in France at the moment. And the French playoffs are only just happening, and their teams are actually coming up against each other in the semifinals, which haven't started yet, which start like tomorrow or the next day or something. So they're not going to be available for like at least 2 weeks. One of those players is going to probably Leila Lakin's team is going to make it through the finals and potentially have 3 games in the finals there, and potentially not join up with the Connecticut Sun until 2 or 3 weeks into the season. And she's their starting point guard. And if she's unavailable, someone else is going to have to be the starting point guard. And that someone else might be Charlisse Leger-Walker. Like, there's not that many other candidates. You only got a team of 17, I think. So 2 or 3 of those players are going to be cut before when training camp ends. They haven't played any preseason games yet, so we haven't seen anything official in terms of how they're going to set up, how they want to use her, what the plan's going to be. We've only seen the little clips. Other teams have played preseason games over the weekend just gone, like the last couple of days. A few teams have begun doing that. Their first one is, I think it might be Thursday New Zealand time, possibly Wednesday, but I think it's Thursday. Hopefully that'll be televised in some way, shape, or form. Not all of them are, but many of them do get that treatment, and if so, that will be great. If not, there'll at least be highlights or something, and we'll get a better indication then of where she fits in. But like, I'm yet to see anything that leaves me anything other than extremely positive about how the situation is going, and I really hope it gets the attention that it deserves. If it doesn't, well, that's what we're here for. But like, there was a fair amount of buzz about her getting drafted. And I haven't really seen a whole lot about what's happening in training camp, but to me, this is far more significant, is the actual playing in the WNBA, not just getting the draft. The drafted is your step in the door. What do you do after that? Well, everything she's done after that so far has been brilliant. And it reminds me once again of how her college coach, like a day before the draft, told media, this is the steal of the draft right here. Whichever player grabs this player, Charlisse Leger-Walker is going to be so much more effective, impactful for whichever team she's drafted for than anyone guesses, and then her potentially where whatever number the draft pick ends up being, that's not going to reflect how important she's going to be for that team. And all of that stuff seems to be coming true. It's just like it's glowing recommendation after glowing recommendation, and I can't see any way she misses the roster. I've now got an inkling that maybe there's a chance she might even be starting in a WNBA debut, at least for the first couple of games, potentially. If not starting, she'll certainly have a role off the bench to play.
Let's zoom back into New Zealand for the NBL here. Otago Nuggets are 3-0. Then we've got three teams who are 3-1, Tuatara, Rams, and Airs. Hawke's Bay yet to win a game. I did see Jackson Ball is back in the mix. But Hawke's Bay are 0-4. Otago, they have Sam Timmins, the big man there. He's still leading the way there. I did learn a little bit about Isaac Miller-Jose. Jose? Maybe just Jose.
I think they called him Jose.
Shout out to Miller Jose.
Yeah.
He's doing some stuff for them as well, and he's a New Zealander. He's from Wellington, so he's doing good stuff there. What has caught your eye from another week of NBL basketball?
Timmins is with Southland, so it's close, but not quite. But Southland have been pretty good. They're going well. But yeah, Otago's probably been the surprise. Ethan Rusbatch is with them, so one of the better veteran presences you could get. They are one of those teams who have a few players who have hung around for a while. Like I think I don't know. I'm looking at their whoops, lost my thingamajig. I'm looking at their roster just now, and it is like it's not the flashy one you might expect for a team that's going quite well. I don't know. I don't actually think I've seen them play, so I'm probably not the best equipped to to discuss. But where we got Manawatu Jets next away to Taranaki, so I'll try catch one of them, and then I'll get back to you on that. But the thing that I was looking at, having a peek around some of the stats and stuff, I'm going to throw out a starting five for you here of Kiwi players. In fact, it's a starting five with a bench player, because we can chuck in Taylor Britt as your point guard. We can chuck in a bit of Tane Murray as your shooting guard. Small forward, a little bit of a choice here. You want to go for Ruben Tarangi, or you want to go for maybe Walter Brown? Let's go Tarangi there, and we'll chuck Walter Brown. Well, they can split duos. They can split the four duo stuff between them, and we'll put Liam Judd on the bench. And then your starting big man is Mr. Sam Timmins. There's a starting five there of Kiwi players. The reason I've picked those, well, 5+1, you got a bench player as well. The reason I picked those 6 players is because every one of those 6 players has had a 30-point game so far. Very early on in the season, we're only like 2 or 3 weeks in. Most teams have played like 4 games or less. Every one of those players there, all New Zealanders, have had a 30-point game. And it's not fluky stuff either, because I think Tarangi scored 35 for the Fire in the first game, and then he's been injured, and I don't think he's actually played again since. But Timmins has had a 30-pointer. Timmins has also had a 26-pointer. Taylor Britt scored at least 20 points for at least 22 points in 3 of his games so far. Walter Brown's done similar stuff. Tane Murray's been shooting the lights out for Tauranga as well. These weren't one-off crazy performances. Maybe a little bit for Liam Judd, but even then, he's had a what else has Judd done? He hasn't had anything else in the big notables, but he had a 34-pointer for Nelson on Anzac Day, which is crazy stuff for a guy who he did score 17 against Canterbury, so that's something. So even then, that's not completely out of the blue. These are guys who are scoring good points for their teams, and you expect a certain Kiwi role player certainly in this league. You don't necessarily expect these teams to have Kiwi guys shooting the lights out and scoring big points and leading their teams in that way. Often that's what they get the imports to do, but there's been a fair bit of that so far from a variety of teams, because I mentioned I think 3 or 4 different teams represented in those 6 players that I just listed there. That is the thing that has excited me the most about the start of the season. We're also starting to see some of those younger guys pop up. So like I don't know, Robertson getting good minutes for Wellington, or Xander Masters had a big game the other day. Xander Masters was he was in the under-19 World Cup team that finished fourth. I have to specify because the under-19 and under-17 most recent FIBA World Cup squads both finished fourth at their World Cups. And there was crossover, like Jackson Ball is one of the guys who was there in both of those teams. Xander Masters was part of that. He was part of that under-19s team. He's only just turned 20, like 2 months ago. And the other day he had where does he pop up here? He scored 24 points last week for Tauranga as well. So that's a 20-year-old joining in on this scoring party that we're seeing from Kiwi players in the Kiwi Basketball League. So that is hugely promising stuff. I think last year, a lot of the young player stuff was overshadowed by Jackson Ball just because he was so good. But it was also like all of those guys from the under-19s World Cup squad, except I think Goodman and Halefanu. I think they're the only two. The other 10 all were playing some like varying degrees of NBL already at that stage. So it's there's foundations very well set there, and that is not going to stop. You know, that's only going to continue, and you're seeing that already from someone like Xander Masters, and various other examples. I love the young players. It's the same thing throughout the last 4 or 5 years, but the young dudes they have at Canterbury are awesome. Mana Martin and Ihaka Kate's been I think he started on the weekend. He's been getting some good minutes as well. They've had 1 or 2 injuries, which has helped that, but that's, you know, you're the next man up as a 18, 19-year-old. You're doing something very good. And yes, that is a little bit scattered, but that's the sort of summary of where I'm at with this stuff. There's a lot of exciting action there going on in the NBL.
Which New Zealand football game was postponed because there were no field markings?
This was Auckland FC Reserves versus Bay Olympic at Fred Taylor Park in Waitakere, which is where the Auckland FC Reserves always play their games. So I don't know exactly what was going on there. Maybe it was because there's been a lot of rain. I don't know. Maybe the markings needed a touch up, or maybe they mowed the grass and just forgot. You know, it's probably council maintenance as well. I don't think this would have been down to any of the clubs or anything. No one's got like private facilities in the domestic level here, but yeah, they turned up an hour before kickoff, team list submitted and everything. So it's not like they were expecting this, but teams turned up to the game and had to call it off because no one could see where the sideline was.
I was expecting some football club in the back of beyond, but it was just Auckland FC. So that sounds about right for any Wellington Phoenix fan. Quickly though, Chris Wood, he is helping Nottingham Forest avoid relegation, and obviously we're tracking the powerhouse English Premier League iconic team that is touring New Zealand next year, Tottenham Hotspur, who will probably be relegated. Where are we at with Chris Wood returning to Nottingham Forest and simultaneously relegating Tottenham? I am curious about Tottenham being relegated, but more curious about Chris Wood saving Nottingham Forest from relegation.
Well, he had, he scored on the weekend. He scored in a win against Sunderland. That was not his first goal back from injury, because remember, he did play an under-21s game. He scored 10 minutes into that one, but it was the most important goal, first Premier League goal back as well. Also a Premier League goal, which I think is number 92 for his career, which brings him equal with Mark Viduka, the Australian legend, who's the highest scoring Australian player. So now Chris Wood can claim to have scored as many goals as any Australian player, let alone how much he's dwarfed every other, the 5 other New Zealanders who have played in the Premier League, 5 and counting, because I have little inklings about the potential for Tyler Bindon and Alex Paulson next season. I think there's slight little openings. We'll see how that goes. It's probably more likely they get sent out on loan again, but especially Bindon, I think there's a chance that they don't. But we'll leave that for another day until we get more information. Chris Wood his goal was nice too, because it was such a good indication of the the Chris Wood that they've been missing. And everyone thinks about that as like the big target man. We can lump the ball up to him and he'll flick on headers and he'll score headers and he'll just be tough to deal with. And you get that from him as well. But the way they scored was a really clever tactical approach against Sunderland, who are a little bit iffy playing out from the back. And so they chucked up two strikers so that they got Igor Jesus starting alongside Chris Wood, sort of underneath him, but he would push up alongside him to press with two wingers, Gibbs White on one side, Hutchinson on the other side, and they could press as like a block of four, going man-to-man against the Sunderland team, putting pressure on their goalkeeper every time he got the ball. And by doing that, they led to a turnover, which led to Chris Wood just dinking one smartly, like very clever little left-footed finish using the time that he had and finishing that one off. You don't think of him as being like a high presser, because the instinct people come up with that is like, high energy, everyone's sprinting around, headless chickens everywhere, and it's just chaos, chaos, chaos. This is structured, like cohesive pressing. But Chris Wood is so good at that stuff. He knows his angles. He knows how to, this is the passing lane I have to cut off. And he just stuck a foot out, blocked a pass coming out, falls to Gibbs White, who returns it to him, and he flips it past the keeper. So it's like smart, efficient stuff, and that is what Chris Wood also brings to the table. And he's been so good for them since he's come back. Even in the first few games where he looked rusty, you could see that how much his presence, having him out there, matters, probably on a mental aspect, just having another leader on the field, but also from that tactical aspect of what he allows you to be able to do, even as he sort of acclimatizes himself back to playing after a long injury. And he has played, where's my stat here? I think it's 250 minutes across the 6 or so games since he's been back. And exactly 250 minutes. And in that time, Nottingham Forest have outscored their opponents by 8 goals to 2. And they're undefeated in those 5 games. 5 games. Remember as well that Coach Vitor Pereira, having not actually worked with him before, because he's a new coach, he's the 4th head coach that they've had this season, but he comes in, and as soon as Chris Wood is available, he's in the starting lineup. It's not a case of, we'll give you 5 minutes off the bench here, we'll give you 10 minutes the next week. It was straight into the starting lineup for a European quarterfinal, Europa League stuff away to Porto. And he started most of the games since then. When he hasn't, it's because it's been straight after a short turnaround. He's just like, they were already on an uptick before he returned. So that is an aspect to add to this. Like Pereira had them, he was starting to get them fizzing before that, but also the injection of Chris Wood on top of that has helped them to another level. They won 5-0 against Sunderland on the weekend, which pretty much, not officially, but pretty much books the fact that they won't be relegated now, which means they can focus on trying to win the Europa League, because they're also in the semi-finals of that. And they are up against Aston Villa, so don't have to travel too far for that one. Just to don't know which one's further north between Nottingham and Birmingham, but they're a local rival in a European competition semi-final, 3 games away from potentially winning that. Winston Roof is the only New Zealander who's ever won a European competition. Before that was the Cup Winners' Cup in 91, 92, something like that. So that would be history, let alone the fact as well that if they did happen to do that, and they probably won't be favourites against Aston Villa. They might be a slightly better form than them at the moment, but Villa are quite a bit up on them on the Premier League table, so they wouldn't necessarily be favourites, but it's certainly, they drew with them not long ago. Actually, in Wood's first Premier League game back, I think, was against Aston Villa. They drew 1-1. So they'll definitely give them a contest, and if you're in the contest, who knows what can happen. And that means, like, if you win the Europa League, you get qualification to the Champions League as well. And I can't envisage any other way in which Chris Wood could potentially play Champions League before the end of his career. So that is another aspect to this. He sort of turns up and everyone's talking relegation battle, relegation. Can he get like help? Can he get back in time to help avoid that? Well, he did. They've probably already avoided it. And now he gets to shift focus to the other side of the coin, right? Where he's like, no, actually, we're playing for a trophy now. So relegation, forget about the worst case scenario. Now we're looking at a best case scenario. Can we win a trophy from the rest of the campaign? So that is like, as far as being able to get back from injury and have some sort of say in the rest of the season, that's kind of dream case scenario stuff there for Chris Wood, who is living up to those expectations as well with the impact that he's had on this team. in those 250 golden minutes that he's been able to play.
I am watching this Ryan Thomas pass for Pek Zvola,
Smooth, that one.
which is like it's basically along the carpet the whole time, but it needs to be seen to really feel how that looks because absolutely delightful from Ryan Thomas, who will be a very important creative player just based on seeing that pass for the All Whites at the World Cup. And especially if you're putting Ryan Thomas with a little bit of Marko Stamenic, with a little bit of Joe Bell, with a little bit of Elijah Just, with a little bit of Sarpreet Singh maybe, and also a bit of Callum McCowatt, because Callum McCowatt's probably the best. Like him and Elijah Just feel to me like the best attacking players, aside from Chris Wood, from New Zealand around the world at the moment. We've talked a lot about Elijah Just. We've probably talked a lot about Callum McCowatt as well, but Callum McCowatt's been on a recent string of bangers from outside the box. So what's the latest on Callum McCowatt? And what's his best role? Is he a striker? Is he like a winger? Is he attacking midfielder? Where do you see Callum McCowatt's best position?
See, that's a very good question because I think there's a couple different answers that could be given to that. Because a lot of the season with Silkboy, he's been playing as a right wing / right midfielder type dude, which means he's getting the ball on the counter attack and rushing it forward, and it means he's in those sort of spots outside the box to try get shots away, but also he's able to get into the box on the end of crosses from the other side, and he's had a fair few chances that way and been pretty effective for them. But then also they didn't have a lot of control in their midfield for a lot of the season. So what they've actually done in the last couple of games is they've moved him back to a position he used to play for them, certainly a lot last season he played there, as like an attacking midfielder. So a little bit more of a central midfielder, but an attacking midfielder with a couple of the guys. So he's not just the one guy hanging under, like a Guillermo Mai hanging behind the striker and staying up top. He's like a midfielder, but a midfielder whose job is to get forward to the edge of the box and try and make, which means he's taking even more shots from outside the box. I think like half the shots he's taken this season have been from outside the box, and that's led to a few superb goals. And he, in their last 3 games, they lost 7-0 a couple of weeks ago to FC Copenhagen, which at that point it was like they might get relegated. This is not good. This team has been stumbling throughout the season, and the whole time, like the more you go along thinking, well, they'll climb out of it at some point, you start running out of time, and then when you have a 7-0 loss during the relegation rounds, you start to think, well, this might be a little bit too late. Since then, they've had a draw and 2 wins, and Callum McCowatt has either a goal or an assist in all of them. Him and this bro Tony Adamson, who's their striker, they're standing on the last man, target man type Chris Wood style striker, who I'm pretty sure used to play with Callum McCowatt at Helsingør before each of them separately moved to Silkeborg. So they were teammates at a previous club, they're teammates at this club. Those two have combined for, it was 68% of their goals this season, just between those 2 guys, let alone any they might have assisted for other players. They did get 2 different goal scorers on the weekend, although McCowatt still set one of those up. He also won a penalty. I can't remember if it was the Anzac game. I think it was the game before that. He won a penalty and he scored a goal. So you don't get an assist for that, but maybe you should get an assist for that because it came from a goal. Like it came from a thing that he created. That is an insane amount of responsibility to fall upon 2 different, only 2 players, although their goalkeeper was unbelievable on the weekend. So he gets some credit for that one. But those 2 guys have been carrying this team on attack throughout the season, which is probably why they've been in a relegation battle. If you only got 2 guys that you can rely upon like that, but it's also the reason why they can get out of this relegation battle and why it looks like now perhaps they will, having just beaten the 2 teams that have fallen below them, is because they have 2 guys that they can rely upon, and they seem to be able to rely upon them very consistently. And one of them is Callum McCowatt, who is having just a tremendous season. 11 goals, I think it's 3 assists for the season. Basically put, without him, they would be getting relegated. Thanks to the fact that he's there, they might not be getting relegated, and they're going to be able to get a fairly significant transfer fee for him at some stage, because they've already said during January that they rejected offers for him and Adamson. Both of those two guys were getting interest from elsewhere. They said to all comers, like, no, we're not going to sell them. But they also kind of hinted that, come back in 6 months once we've dodged the drop, then we'll see. Once we have a chance to be able to use the money you give us to buy new players, ideally a couple of you turn McCowatt into 2 or 3 other players, then there you go. Ideally players from New Zealand if they want to follow that same path. They're what do you call them? They're like director of football basically said, like, well, his transfer fee is going to go up once he's played at a World Cup as well. So we'll wait until then and then see what happens. Like, it's very unlikely he comes back next season. I think we're expecting a sale, but he's doing everything he can to go out on a positive note. And the Danish league is serious stuff. And to have scored 11 goals in that when he's not even a striker, to do that as like a midfielder attacker, a midfielder like wide forward type guy, is an incredible haul, and probably one of the great like individual seasons we've seen from a Kiwi player playing in Europe outside of Chris Wood and Winton Rufer. Like, it's right up there with absolutely anyone else. And it might not even be the best one this season because Elijah Just has been even better playing for Motherwell and just got nominated for the PFA's Player of the Year, like shortlist of 4 players. He's up for Player of the Year, and he's already been named to the PFA's Team of the Season. That's the PFA, the Players, whatever you call it, Players Football Association, blah blah blah. That's voted by the other players in the league across the other teams. So those are his comrades and his cohorts, and they've recognized what he's up for. I'm sure there'll be plenty more accolades coming his way from media and fans and stuff like that, and club awards and things like that. He's been tremendous, and it's no longer like the best kept secret in Scotland. It's like that cat's out of the bag. Everyone can see how good Elijah Just is, and he's getting all the recognition for that. And frankly, that probably puts him on a very equal footing alongside his best mate, Callum McCowatt, who's been playing football with since they were like, I don't know, 8, 9 years old or something, maybe even earlier, in that transfer watch list, because he's also going to be getting a fair amount of attention.
Wellington Phoenix men got smoked in their last game of the season. Now we just stay tuned to see what happens. I don't know what else we can say. We've been talking about Chris Greenacre probably too much in recent weeks. Wait and see what happens. Players coming and going. Wait and see what happens. But we got A-League finals that is far more interesting to talk about. Auckland FC. This is an eliminator.
Yeah.
So they play against Melbourne City on Saturday, 5 p.m. Lose, season over. Win, they progress. But the Wellington Phoenix women, they got a double banger. Sunday away to Brisbane, 7 o'clock. Then the next weekend they host Brisbane. I'm hoping that is at Jerry Collins Stadium in Porirua. It's actually at Porirua Park. So shout out to the A-League for not recognising Jerry Collins. But thank Jah, it's not at the Cake Tin.
Well, apparently the players themselves said, like, they were offered, do you want to go and play it at the home of the Warriors, the second home of the Warriors, Matt Henry, Gray Nichols, etc. Stadium. Gray Nichols.
Henry Gray and Henry Nichols. You can't say Henry Gray Nichols. It's not working.
No, that's gone in a different direction. They were offered it, and they said, no, we want to play at Porirua Park / Jerry Collins Stadium because that is the ground we've been playing at throughout the year. It's the ground we feel most comfortable at and where we think we got the best chance of winning. And they are putting up temporary seating, so they're boosting out the availabilities. And guess what? Sporting crowd lingo, similar to the jargon we're talking about before of sellouts. We're heading for a sellout here as well.
I will be most interested to see how many people are on that grass bank at Jerry Collins Stadium, because that does look like the best place to watch the game, unless you want to be part of the grandstand vibe. And of course, if that bank is a bit wet, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
But I do love that big bank at the one end of Jerry Collins Stadium in Porirua. Haven't seen the Wellington Phoenix women play football in a couple of weeks. I imagine some of them would have been busy with the football ferns.
Some of them got injured at the football ferns.
So who's going to be...
P of Lock.
Well, they need P of Lock to play, don't they?
Yeah, she's still touch and go. Emma Pleinenberg played on Friday. They had a friendly game in order for this reason, because they haven't played for a 2-week international break. And then the first week of finals, they're not in because they got to bye through the first round. So they called in the best team they could from locally, which is Auckland United, reigning National League champions, not reigning Northern League champions, but that's a different story. The best team in the land, who have been smoking everyone lately, and they came and had by all accounts, it was an open doors game as well. By all accounts, a very competitive game. Auckland United brought their best team. Phoenix obviously played their best team, at least to start with, because they are preparing for finals and trying to keep everyone fresh and available. And Emma Pleinenberg started. So she's fine. She's recovered from her ankle injury that caused her to miss the 2 Football Ferns games recently. Pia Vlock didn't play in that game, so she's still touch and go, but she has another week to recover from that. And then after that, there's, like you said, it's a 2-legged finals series as well against Brisbane, who they drew with when they played them away in Brisbane last time. Brooke Nunn scored right at the end of the game to salvage a draw, which was slightly early-ish mid-season, which was about not long after they'd had a couple of very close away losses, and it was looking like, can they get over this hurdle that they've had in past seasons of being able to turn good away performances into wins? That late draw against Brisbane, I think, it came after a win away against Western Sydney, but they're the one team they've been able to beat away throughout their existence. I think Western Sydney, did they finish wooden spoon in both leagues? I'm not sure. They wooden spoon in the men's league. They weren't very good in the women's one, so they've guts to them.
Yes,
but
they are last in the women's league.
So the worst team in the A-League. Good for them. What was I saying? Yeah, that was quite a little bit of a turning point for them, being able to get that draw away in Brisbane. And when they played them in Wellington later on in the season, which actually was at Mount Henry Stadium, because there was a double header with the men's team, they beat them 3-0. So this is an opponent they haven't lost to this season, and who they had a good home win against not that long ago, only a month or two ago. Not the worst matchup they could be hoping for in a situation like this. Just a matter of shaking off those ring rusts, and that's why they played Auckland United. They actually drew against Auckland United. It was 2-2. Maggie Jenkins got a double, Mackenzie Anthony got a double, but the Phoenix won on penalties. So that's another good bit of preparation as well, getting ready for the penalty shootout, just in case.
Not having Pia Vlock isn't ideal, but as you've been talking all season, you do have a bit of Macy Fraser as a creative player in that attacking midfield zone. I
don't think she played in that game either, so touch and go there. She might be be injured. I'm not sure, but who knows.
And I think Lucia Leon, her best footy comes when she is in one of the advanced positions.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's ways they can deal with not having Pia Vlock or Macy Fraser, but ultimately the best way for them to deal with missing one of their best players this season is being good defensively. And this season, the Wellington Phoenix women have conceded 17 goals. They are the only team who have conceded less than 20 goals. Brisbane Roar have conceded 39 goals, which is the worst in the A-League. So Western Sydney Wanderers, they're last, and they only conceded 34 goals. So I think that has been my focus all season with the Wellington Phoenix women, is their defense. That's why I can't stop talking about Mackenzie Barry. And obviously Vic Essend's very good in the goal as well. And I think it's a good matchup for them defensively. They should be the better defensive team in this matchup, which is going to be under the microscope away first. But I don't have any fears for the Wellington Phoenix women based on how good defensively they have been all season. And it won't take much to get Michaela Woods into space, maybe even Mackenzie Anthony into space. And of course, Brooke Nunn creating on the right. You're going to have Mania Elliott bursting up and down the left as well. Good midfield. For me, everything for the Wellington Phoenix women is defense. And to be honest, it's the same for Auckland FC. Because their success in the A-League to me is based around their defense. They don't have the lowest goals conceded this season. That is Sydney FC, who are on 25, Auckland FC 29. They're the two teams below 30. And we've got 2 seasons in a row now of Auckland FC being good defensively, and funnily enough, being good in the A-League. They've been top 3 in the A-League in their first 2 seasons, which can't be understated. The thing for Auckland FC is that, I don't know, it's a messy situation where they've been good enough not to lose a few games, to come back, to fight back, to get draws, to keep battling, but they haven't won those games either. So they head into an elimination final having not won in their last 5 games, and they'll be playing Melbourne City, who have 4 wins and 1 loss in their last 5 games.
And that 1 loss was the game that forced Auckland FC from second down to third, with the last few seconds of the regular season, where Luka Jovanovic scores in the, I think, 8th minute of stoppage time for Adelaide to give them that victory, then tears his shirt off and gets a yellow card for that. And then because he got a yellow card, he already had a yellow, so he was red carded, so he's suspended for the first leg of the finals now. But that's why Adelaide finished above Auckland, is because of that. Like, if that goal doesn't go in, they stay ahead of them by like a point or something like that. So guts to Auckland, but also, they have gone 5 games without a win. This is their fault. They can't blame someone else scoring in the last minute, even though they have had a few, like Newcastle was scoring a lot of last minute goals as well to change results while they were trying to compete for top spot. But last year, that was Auckland, right? Last year, that was Auckland scoring a lot of late goals. And this year, they don't seem to be able to do that. Side stat on that, Sam Cosgrove. Oh, that's the other thing. Jovanovic's goal was his 11th of the season, so he goes level and now gets to share the Golden Boot with Sam Cosgrove. So Sam Cosgrove's still Golden Boot, but he doesn't get it outright because of that goal that also stopped his team from getting a bye next week, which is significant because they have Francis de Vries, Nando Peineke, Jake Brimmer all trying to get back from injury. So having a week off would have been pretty big for them in that regard. And we know how important Francis de Vries is because he himself assisted 4 of those goals from Sam Cosgrove. Sam Cosgrove hasn't scored a goal after the 58th minute of a game this season. Like, he's not scored a goal in the last half hour of any game, even though they've had so many of these instances where, like, the last half hour, chasing a game, trying to get an equalizer or a winner, Plan A has lumped the ball to Sam Cosgrove. He's not scored a goal in those situations. But the team has scored some goals, and they did do that on the weekend again, where Guillermo Mai gets a double. Liam Gillian with a sneaky assist off the bench. Haven't seen much of him recently because he's been focusing on being Auckland's top goal scorer in the Pro League, playing the Oceania stuff. Yeah, it's been wobbly. But when you get into elimination football, that ability to scrap through for a draw, it becomes much more of a positive than it is in regular season football when you need the wins because you get 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw. The difference between a win and a draw is significant. In knockout football, less so, because you just go to extra time or you just go to penalties or whatever. And yeah, you avoid defeat, you stay in the contest. That's how you advance. So they have that trait, which keeps me still fairly positive about how they're going to go. But Melbourne City have been in good form. I'd actually say the same thing about Brisbane Roar for the Phoenix women, their matchup against them. They concede a lot of goals, but they also do score a lot of goals. They've, like, since losing 3-0 to the Phoenix, they've won 4 in a row, and those 4 goals have been like 4-2 against Newcastle, 4 games, 4-2 against Newcastle, 5-2 against Perth, 2-1 against Canberra, 3-0 against Adelaide. So they're scoring a lot of goals recently, so that will be a test for the Phoenix's defense. But also, if that's the strength of your team pitted against the strength of their team, and the Phoenix have the best defense in the competition, well, if you trust that, and if that wins out, Brisbane Roar do concede a lot of goals. So if you shut them down going forward and don't let them win a shootout, you're probably going to be able to beat them. And also the 2-legged thing means, like, a draw away from home is fine because they will back themselves to win at home in the second leg. Which is also a reason why maybe you don't have to rush Pierre Vlock back and you can target the second game as well. Auckland, their injuries are more significant, though, because they just don't look the same without Francis de Vries, right? And it's not just Cosgrove, it's Jesse Randall doesn't seem as effective without. He's gone through his longest drought of not scoring or assisting at the moment. Did contribute, I think, to their first goal. He put the crossover that Cosgrove nodded down for Mai to score, I think is how that went. Nodded across for him. So he was, he's heavily involved in that game. I thought played, for the most part, played really well. Like he was the guy more than Lachlan Brook, more than Guillermo Mai, even though he got the finishing touches on the goals, more than Sam Cosgrove. It was Jesse Randall who looked like he could spark something. And he did spark a lot. It's just the final delivery wasn't always great. And I think a lot of that is because he's having to do more than he was before. He's having to do this stuff outside the box. He's not like beating guys in the box to get to the byline and pull it back. He's having to beat guys just to get near the penalty area because he's starting from further back because he hasn't got DeVries like feeding him the ball up the line. He hasn't got DeVries pushing up and overlapping and attracting attention from defenders, meaning they can't double up on Randall because you need to be able to shut down the cross from DeVries because that's such a threat. And just without that sort of dual combination there, it hasn't been quite the same from him. He's still been doing his best and he's still been like their most, if not effective, their most reliable kind of, the guy who's going to do something for them. But yeah, just that he's not getting into the same positions at the end of those moves as he was at different stages of the season. So they really need, and also I think that defensively, I'm thinking now after watching them against a good Sydney team who played well. Like that's the thing. A lot of these haven't been bad performances from Auckland. They just haven't been able to win. And the thing they keep doing is they keep conceding the first goal. It's happened in all 5 of those games, and they've never won a game after conceding the first goal. And they keep doing it. Like you're not going to get away with that in the finals. You're going to have to score that first one and play from in front, which they're usually very good at. There was a blip during the season midway through where they kept throwing away leads, but other than that, most of their existence, they've been pretty good at holding things down. But you got to make that, like you got to strike that first blow, and if they don't do that, that's where the worries come through. But they are a good enough team to be able to beat Melbourne City, and they should. It will be a home game as well, which is very significant for them. And I am quite excited actually about how this has gone down because this is the biggest test of them, right? This is the biggest thing that they've had to come up against, where it's like you're not just cruising into the finals on the back of like you've been of the back of being minor premiers and you've been beating everyone and you've been keeping all of these clean sheets and everything. Like they have wobbles, they have things that they need to overcome, but also they're in the finals and they have the ability to do that. They have the players who can score them some goals, keep them some clean sheets, and win them some games in finals footy. It's like it's the challenge that they have. It's a challenge that they haven't really faced before, and I'm actually quite excited to see how they approach it and how they sort of just how up for it they are, because I have a feeling they will be. I don't think Steve Corrigan takes much for granted, and I don't know if this game is too soon to rush Francis de Vries back, but remember they did rush Michael Veld back when he was half fit, at least get him on the bench.
Yeah, that's very different. Very different.
It's very different. Well, he played the next week, and he has played every minute
Michael Veld
since.
was on the
bench. I know
bench.
the game he was on the bench was like in case of emergency.
Yeah, he's not there to play.
Of emergency. Yeah, but well, yeah, I'm not saying that exactly. I'm just saying they've been able to, like, he was out for 4 weeks or something like that, and he was on the bench the second week and played the third week. So even then he was back ahead of schedule just by playing the next week, discounting the one he was on the bench. Like they've been all right at that kind of stuff. Sakai's he's got injured a couple times, but there've been separate injuries, and he's been able to make recoveries. Peinecker as well, like separate injuries, but he's been able to come back from them on schedule. Like that bit's been all right. Maybe Francis de Vries will be okay for this week. More likely, they're probably going to have to play it without him. But
see that, like,
that's just another.
Yeah, like, let's just assume he's not playing. What we've seen from Auckland FC, basically over the last month, is Sakai and Callum Elliott have both played both sides of the field. Sakai's played right back and left back, and then we've had Callum Elliott move from right back to left back. Yes, they don't have a left foot crossing game like Francis de Vries, but like the solution to not having Francis de Vries is, I think it's good for Callum Elliott and his World Cup hopes if he can plug a hole at left back pretty well. But like either one of them at left back is not terrible. Like they're still going to be.
No, that's why
hard.
they should still be turning up being like, yeah, we are the favorites. We were going to be assertive about this game and we are going to come out and win. But there's certain things De Vries does that no one's going to replace.
Yeah,
And
I'm not
that
saying
also
they're
gets
yeah,
the
yeah.
best out of Cosgrove, which we haven't,
I'm not
which
saying
is
they're
crucial for him.
I'm not saying they are as good as Francis De Vries,
Yeah,
but it
I
is
know what you mean.
in addition to what Auckland FC are doing, is we have seen Callum Elliott play left back. I didn't know he could play left back.
I did. He did it for the under-20s back in the day, but
Yep,
at a
shut
World
up.
Cup, no less, I think. Did he? No, Kakache was in that team. He might have been the backup. It might have been in
Yeah.
qualifying, but still,
Yep.
he's done it before.
He's not done it for Auckland FC. And in the last few weeks, we have seen both Sakai look great at left back. We've seen Callum Elliott do a job at left back. Either way, they are very hard-working defenders who are always going to be behind the ball. They're always going to be pushing up with the ball as well because Callum Elliott works just as hard as anyone else. And I think they can maintain their identity in a big finals game. And as you said, it's going to be a massive game, home game, Mount Smart, because the last finals game they had at Mount Smart, they lost.
Yeah, that's right.
So that it's going to be very interesting to see how that unfolds moving forward. And Gallios is probably out injured as well.
That's right. He did go off injured, and that was already something where, because, I did mention like that there is a defensive drop off not having De Vries there because he's got the combinations there and he's the natural left-footed guy. Most of the drop off not having him is attacking though, and I do think, to further your point there, like, whether it'll probably be Elliott on the left and Sakai on the right, I think, because then you at least have you still get your best right back in that position on the other side. So it's sort of compromising in a way where there's domino effects. I think that is the way to do it. That's how they have been the last couple of weeks. And defensively, I got no problem with Callum Elliott in that position. I got no problem with those two as the fullbacks. In fact, Elliott's probably a little bit faster than De Vries, so that might even be beneficial in certain aspects. It's the way they've been caught through the middle. That's the issue, I think. It was a little bit less so against Sydney, but it's like they've conceded a lot of transitional kind of counter-attacking goals where teams have just run through their midfield, and that's the thing that I don't think they've found a solution to, and I don't think Verstraete's been as good in the last month or two as he was at the start of the season, nowhere near as good as he was at the start, where he was brilliant to begin with. Gallegos has played a bit of that during that time. Howison's played a bit during that time. I'm not sure. It might not even be like an individual thing. It might be more about how they're structured, which is causing this. I'm not sure, but like that's where the defensive frailty, I think, has been is the way they've been sort of run through, and there's this. I think they're still looking for solutions to that, and the injury to Gallegos, throws another spanner in those works.
Righto, let's finish with some cricket. We did have the White Ferns ODI squad. Susie Bates has announced her retirement. It's going to be fascinating to see how awkward that situation gets.
Yeah, well.
Because Susie Bates is not playing very good cricket right now. It won't matter so much in the ODIs, but if we're getting into a T20 World Cup and Susie Bates is batting down the order and isn't like she's a spinner who bats down the order now in T20s. Nancy Patel can do that job. Flora Devonshire can do that job. Izzy Sharp's a better lower order batter. Jess Kerr's a better all-rounder right now. There is a lot of competition for spots in that lower order. And Susie Bates her form has fallen off a cliff in the last 2 years. That's the dirty secret. That's why she's retiring. Because she's not very good anymore. But she has a chance to finish her career on a high with great performances. We'll wait and see. And I'm just curious how that looks in T20s. But they will be playing ODIs first. The way this was delivered, the big news was young players' first ODI tour. It's a pretty specific thing. It's their first overseas ODI tour. Because a lot of these players helped the White Ferns win the ODIs against South Africa. So they're already ODI cricketers. Flora Devonshire was at the T20 World Cup last year. Nancy Patel's played 4 ODIs. Emma McLeod's played 6. Izzy Sharp has played 6. These aren't new players. But yes, of course, it's their first overseas ODI tour. So it's a very specific thing to drive the headlines, and I just found that a little bit weird. But this is, like, the White Ferns were good in ODIs against South Africa. It's generally the same group, but the biggest news is that Molly Penfold's back. She is selected ahead of Kaylee Knight, who was pretty good in the South Africa series. And Molly Penfold she had her best season of domestic bowling last season. So it's good to have her back, and it also shows the depth that you've got Kaylee Knight. She's in the mix there as well. And Emma McCowatt, I don't think she was involved in that South Africa series, but she is the best, specifically one-day batter in New Zealand on the rise. She's kind of the only young batter who averages around 30 in one-day cricket, and she has been excellent for multiple summers. But again, she's already played 9 games for New Zealand. And I did see this portrayed as a changing of the guard. The guard's already changed. Like, the young players, a lot of these players debuted last summer. So forgive me if that's not the focus for this tour right now. It's going to be tricky for them to win in England, especially this ODI group. But I'm curious how they can perform. Obviously, we got Mealy Kerr as captain. She's awesome. And the rest of it's just a good core group. And sounds a bit rude, but once they shuffle Suzie Bates out of this group, it's going to be full steam ahead with the Mealy Kerr era. And the White Ferns are perfectly equipped to play ODI cricket without Suzie Bates, Sophie Devine, Leah Tahuhu, and so on. So that's where I see the ODI White Ferns group, because when we go focus on T20 cricket, Devine's going to be involved, Tahuhu's going to be involved, and we'll wait and see about Suzie Bates' involvement. I will say the bar for her performances is very low. She's batting 8. She doesn't need to score many runs. She might bowl 2 or 3 overs. She only needs to bowl. She doesn't even need to take a wicket. She can bowl a couple overs for 5 RPO, bowling at leg stump. She's doing her job. And I will also add that, like, Bates and Devonshire and Nancy Patel, they're benefiting from Fran Jonas, whatever she's up to, and Eden Carson being out injured at the moment. So that's the White Ferns. T20 cricket's far more important for the White Ferns right now, but ODI cricket is where you're getting the best insight into how the White Ferns will look moving forward. But also keep in mind, all of this stuff has already started to happen. It's nothing new. There is no changing of the guard right now. These players have already played a bunch of cricket for New Zealand, and that's the same thing that's happened with the Blackcaps. They lost their T20 series. We've been tracking this tour of Bangladesh closely as far as like how the Blackcaps have been described. And like a lot of these players have already played for New Zealand. Now, should Bangladesh win games against weakened touring teams in their home conditions? Yes. Like, if Bangladesh toured New Zealand against the full-strength Blackcaps, we would expect the Blackcaps to win every game. The flip side is happening here. A depth New Zealand team is touring against a very good Bangladesh group in their home conditions. Bangladesh won the ODI series, and now they've won the first T20. Kartini Clark got some runs, 51 runs, a strike rate of 138. That was very good for him because he didn't score many runs against South Africa. Dane Cleaver also got a 51 runs at 182. Nick Kelly scored some runs, and Josh Clarkson scored some runs. Bevan Jacobs isn't scoring runs. That's not happening. And this is where we flow into New Zealand A, because a lot of people just want youngsters thrown into the Blackcaps. And like, first of all, that the team's going to lose, because if you have a team full of young batters, like the likeliest outcome is a loss, let alone if you're also playing young bowlers. But the New Zealand A tour of Sri Lanka, where they did actually lose a first-class game, so their undefeated streak is over in first-class cricket because they lost the second game of that tour. Who didn't score runs? Reece Maru. Curtis Heafy scored runs. Matt Boyle scored runs. Dale Phillips didn't score runs. And these are the journeys that the young cricketers are on. And I don't think you can just throw them all into the Blackcaps. But we do have, having reflected on this line of thinking a bit more, I do like how it's been kind of staggered. And this is the best way to introduce new players to international cricket. Like Tim Robinson has got most of the T20 opportunities, and we're seeing how hard it is to perform in international cricket with Bevan Jacobs, who is now averaging 17 with a strike rate of 125 in 10 T20 internationals. Like, you don't just go straight into international cricket and keep dominating. There's ups and downs, and you got to ride it. But the way the Blackcaps development pipeline works, players, to me, they're being best prepared to ride those ups and downs. And I think about Muhammad Abbas. They're working him into a lot more Blackcaps cricket. But they're not working him into a lot more Blackcaps cricket with Reece Maru and Curtis Heafy and Bevan Jacobs in ODIs or Test cricket as well, because he does have a first-class average of 44. It's not like we have seen, like, this tour is a bit different because you do have Kartine Clark, Tim Robinson and Bevan Jacobs, but you're not also having Matt Boyle, who could be there. You're seeing a good stagger in how, especially the young batters, are given game time, and other players are still doing their development thing. Like, we've now got Curtis Heafy, who has scored New Zealand A runs in Bangladesh, South Africa, and Sri Lanka. Reece Maru will be better for having played cricket in Sri Lanka and learning how that goes. At the same time, we've got a little bit more experience with Dean Foxcroft and Josh Clarkson getting their Blackcaps reps up. And why was Dane Cleaver selected in the series ahead of Mitch Hay? Well, because he's the oldest dude in the squad. Right, like, the batting lineup: Kartine Clark, Tim Robinson, Dane Cleaver, Nick Kelly captain, Bevan Jacobs, Dean Foxcroft, Josh Clarkson, Nathan Smith. Funnily enough, the most experienced cricketer in that group was the best performing, Dane Cleaver. You can't just sweep in all the youngsters together. And we've seen this mapped out with New Zealand A and Sri Lanka and the Blackcaps in Bangladesh, that there is some, to me it seems like logical planning, logical staggering of how the young players are selected. It's not just about what the young players are doing. It's about, like, what is the rest of the squad looking like? Because if you, like, maybe the best way to put a Matt Boyle or a Curtis Heafy into the Blackcaps is when the team's a bit stronger and there isn't as much pressure on them. But I don't really see any point in having Matt Boyle, Curtis Heafy, Reece Maru into the Blackcaps with Muhammad Abbas. So your whole top five is youngsters. That seems problematic. But it's also problematic when guys like Henry Nicholls, Will Young and Tom Latham aren't scoring runs. So it's a bit tricky, but I have observed the stagger at how emerging talent is put into the Blackcaps group. And it's also worth mentioning, like, Matt Fisher. I don't know if he deserves first 11 T20 selection for New Zealand.
Well, he didn't last night on the back of that.
And funnily enough, T20 bowling is his worst format. But he's there because it's good experience for him. Because he has made his test debut, first class bowling, one day bowling are his best formats. The Blackcaps need a bowler, chuck him in there. And it's not an inexperienced bowling lineup. Nathan Smith, Matt Fisher, Ben Lister, Isho, Josh Clarkson. Like, it seems an experience. Nathan Smith making his T20 debut. Ben Lister, no one's heard of him before. Josh Clarkson, doesn't he smash sixes? Like, that is the perception of those players. Nathan Smith, he's almost first 11 tests and ODIs. Ben Lister's played over 20 internationals? No, 17 games for New Zealand. He's been around a bit. And Clarkson's played a bunch of games for New Zealand as well. And the Blackcaps needed a fast bowler in place of Ben Sears, so you put Matt Fisher into that situation. That might not be the best move to win a game of cricket, but it is going to help Matt Fisher.
And ultimately, that is kind of the priority for a tour like this. And not just a tour like this, but the A stuff that we've seen as well. Like, that is why A cricket exists, is so that you can do what you're talking about with the staggering of bringing guys from domestic cricket into the Blackcaps with an eye on them being the best Blackcaps players that they can be. And like, the other benefit of doing that kind of staggered approach is that you don't just have Curtis Heavey, for example, scoring plenty of runs for the A stuff on a couple of tours now. You don't just have him being like, well, I need to outperform Tom Latham, Devon Conway, Henry Nichols, whoever else, like the established players that are sort of ahead of him. He's not just waiting for an injury or a bit of rotation or whatever, and then trying to compete with them once he gets some kind of opportunity and puts up some runs. He's also got to outdo Reece Madiu and et cetera, Dale Phillips, whoever else, Tim Robinson. Like, he's out by not just chucking them. If you chuck them all in together, they're kind of just all in their own situations. If you sort of have them in the way that it's been kind of, I certainly think it is plotted out. I think it's definitely deliberate strategy. You do it this way, it's sort of like they're competing with each other as well as competing with the players who are ahead of them, and competing against their opponents in the games that they happen to be playing, because these are also competitive games of cricket where the stats count against your permanent records and things like this. Like, there's a lot of competitive elements there, which are also pushing these guys to be the best version of what they can be. And yeah, that doesn't happen in a straight line where you play more games, you get better. It's about getting different experiences and playing in different countries against different types of bowlers, and with different teammates and all sorts of this stuff. So yeah, I think this is all very plotted and very well plotted out by the sort of, New Zealand cricket decision makers, wherever it is, in order to build out it's building out depth for the Blackcaps, but it's not just, it's also building out tiered depth, where you can see, like, these are the guys who are ready for maybe a World Cup or something. These are guys who are ready for just an overseas tour like the one we're in Bangladesh. These are the guys who are ready for A cricket and then maybe pushing up to try get to the other things. And these are the guys from domestic cricket who we are looking at for future A tours, but haven't quite found room for them yet, etc. Like, that's all. You start breaking it down like that, it becomes kind of an intricate approach. But I think it is just more of a case of, like, these things just fall into place if you have the structures there, and that is effectively what we're seeing. And it is nicely highlighted at a time where we do have a tour at the moment in Bangladesh, with a weekend slash rotated lineup, and we've just had an A tour in Sri Lanka. It sort of puts a lot of this stuff in perspective at the end of a domestic season as well.
The best players in the A Tour were Curtis Heafy, Reece Mariu, and Tim Pringle. Curtis Heafy in the long form series, 1 century, 150, and he also had a knocker 71 in the one days. Matt Boyle hit a first class century and a 1 day 50. Tim Pringle, 8 wickets at 35 in the long form series, 6 wickets at 25 in the one days. So Tim Pringle just following on from his excellent summer for Northern Districts. Matt Boyle keeps getting better and better and better. And Curtis Heafy has the best stats. I think, I think Muhammad. This is partly my opinion, partly what the way the Blackcaps have selected things. I think Muhammad Abbas is the best batter on the rise, but he averages early 30s in all formats. Curtis Heafy averages 40 something and 50 something in first class and 1 day cricket. But I think Muhammad Abbas is a better batter. And that is what I'm seeing from the selections, but also Curtis Heafy's got the strike rate situation where he does score a lot slower. So how does that translate to international cricket? And then Reece Mariu can't be the best batter if he's not scoring runs. Like Muhammad Abbas, his averages might be a bit lower, but he scores runs. He gets centuries. And he scores runs in all 3 formats. Reece Mariu doesn't score runs in all 3 formats right now. Curtis Heafy's had good T20 moments, but he's not scoring dominant runs in all 3 formats. Matt Boyle's scoring runs in all 3 formats. And he is someone to watch out for on the rise. And then you've got Tim Pringle, who is taking wickets in all 3 formats. I think he was second for Plunkett Shield wickets last season. Helped ND win the Super Smash. He's already played T20 internationals. And he was really good in Ford Trophy as well as the one days in Sri Lanka. It's a tricky jigsaw puzzle, the old cricket stats. But, because of course, all the spinners for New Zealand average over 30. Aside from T20 cricket where they all average below 30. So it's like you can have some insights based on stats, but there are, to me, Muhammad Abbas is a good example where he is my favorite batter, and I think he's the best emerging batter right now. His stats are solid, but it's like the production, it's the big centuries. Like Heafy and Mariu, they do score big centuries. But I still feel like Muhammad Abbas is the better batter, and I think Tim Robinson might be better than Muhammad Abbas. Because he's one of our best T20 batters right now, and he's starting to flex it out in the other formats as well. Because I think he might have scored a century in Sri Lanka as well off the top of my head. Better double check that so we're not talking jibber jabber. He did hit 130 in the first class game against Sri Lanka A. Ultimately, we're talking about 5, 6, 7 dudes here who all have clear international potential for New Zealand, let alone the abundance of bowlers, seamers and spinners. And if we can get through a couple of losses in Bangladesh, I think we're going to be looking at even just a stronger Blackcaps picture than we've already been talking about.
Yeah, and this, not just this tour, but the kind of the whole season for Reece Mariu feels like a good example of 2 things, which is kind of the same thing, of the the roomy let your dog sniff the bread where he eats it kind of thing, which is patience, chill, like let his career develop as it develops, but also like the way it sort of feels like a little bit of a cautionary tale about the people who wanted Thomas O'Connor rushed straight into this New Zealand A team. It's like we can chill. Like the players get us like Muddy had a certain amount of exposure last year. He scored some big hundreds. He went and scored big runs as well for New Zealand A. I think in South Africa, I think that was. And then he had a not a bad season because he certainly still had some knocks along the way, but like just a less dominant season. As he'd like coming off that exposure, he played for the Blackcaps in a couple of ODIs. He scored a 50 in one of them. Like he'd become a known factor. Bowlers adjust. You've got to work through that now. Like this is it's a stepping stone that everyone kind of faces. Heafy hasn't been there yet because he hasn't played internationally. He hasn't had the same amount of exposure of like there's scouting video out on you now and people coming up with plans for how to bowl to you. Muddy has probably been going through that this year, and that is completely normal for any young player, any young sports person through these kind of as their career develops. That's how it goes, and it's the reason why like we don't need to rush these things. He doesn't need to be a Blackcaps opener tomorrow, but he might well be one in 2 years on the very same trajectory we're seeing. And the same with like Thomas O'Connor. You don't have to rush this stuff. He had a good finish to the Plunket Shield. Cool. He'll do it again next year. And then we, take things one step at a time.
And whenever it comes for Heafy, he knows he's had at least 3 tours for New Zealand A outside New Zealand, which is a very good foundation for him and all the other young cricketers in New Zealand. And that is our podcast for this week. Stay tuned across all channels. We're working hard. So are you. Big up to you. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Chir chir.